Morena, everybody. If I can take our seats and we'll look at starting to get on with things. You don't know where Nigel is? I know there's cars out there, but do you know? Right, okay. So he'll be down joining us shortly, I dare say. You know, okay. Are we live streaming? Tēnā koutou katoa, everybody. Great to have you here at our fourth, I think, official Social Sustainability Subcommittee meeting. Thank you very much for all making the effort to be here today. Much appreciated. Johnny, if I could ask you first, if you could kick off with our blessing, either in English or Te Reo Māori, whichever you prefer.
As we deliberate on the issues before us, we trust that we will reflect positively on the communities we serve. Let us all seek to be effective and just, so that with courage, vision and energy, we provide positive leadership in the spirit of harmony and compassion.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Johnny. That's number 2. Number 3, apologies. I have apology here for Rob Coford, unable to make it today, and from our Mayor as well, who I'm under the impression is very involved in Sir Trimmer's funeral arrangements. So fantastic to see her involved in all that. Anyone else know of anyone that gives an apology for today at all? I'm picking that Councillor Wilson's just going to be a bit late because he's got his current meeting on with the CE. If not, if I can have a mover for that. Thank you, Kathy. If I could have a seconder. Thank you, Lawrence. I'm assuming no debate or anything, so all those in favour? Aye. Thank you very much. Do I have any declarations of interest relating to items on the agenda today as such? Going once, going twice. Oh, very, very interesting. Going 3 times. And look, I just wanted to note with regards to items on the agenda today, we've got a slightly smaller meeting today. We're looking at finishing at 11 o'clock simply because we had the conversation about the community centre coming into this committee. We also had it coming up shortly with councillors, and I just thought it best to combine rather than doubling up on that. That was the reason for it today. So it wasn't that we're cutting the meeting short to allow for that. It was always going to be a part of our meeting. It just seemed to be easier to kill 2 birds with 1 stone for efficiencies. Public speaking time for items related to the agenda. That's not you. Sandra, you've got your own specific speaking time, but I don't think we have anyone here in relation to that. No one online, is there? I'm picking no. Fantastic. Members' business. Any leave of absence is requested. I'll take that as a no. Matters of an urgent nature. I haven't received any. Sorka, you're looking at me like you've got an imagine. No, just checking. Members' items, we'll just see how we're going at the end, whether there's anything that members want to specifically bring up and discuss as such as also. I'll just make a note and I'll come back to that towards the end of the meeting, seeing how we're going on time as such. So moving on to nothing I have to move in regards to any of that. No, that's correct. Okay, so we're moving on to updates. So we actually have an update here, 7.1, an update from the Kāpiti Health Advisory Group. As you're all aware, it's a group that we've recently endorsed, and we have that with regards to terms of reference, and that's actually come through council now, I think, which is absolutely fantastic. So this is not actually a report requirement per se. It's just I thought it would be nice for Sandra, who's chair of that committee, to just come in and just generally have a bit of a chat with us about what's happening in that space. And it really does dovetail quite nicely onto our other item that we have with regards to reports, which is coming in a little bit later, regards to health as well, which I think Sandra's going to stick around with. So without further ado, Sandra, if you perhaps care to come up to the table, come down here if you like. And you've all received a little bit of a document here, a little bit of a form with regards to what's going to be covered there as well. And feel free to ask any questions or ask for any clarity, preferably after the report's been done, if that's all right. Or are you happy for people to sort of interrupt as we go, sort of thing? Or play
I'm
it by
happy
ear?
to talk as we go.
Okay, no troubles at all. Sandra, I'll leave it to you then.
Thank you, Martin, and good morning, everyone. This is going to be one of those reports where there may be some gaps because I've just come back from being away on holiday for a month, but I think I've managed to pull together from our team the things of interest. So as you know, we have set ourselves up into a number of working groups, and each of those working groups has started on their program and what they're planning to do. I'll just whiz quickly through some of the key features, and I have a couple of things in particular to talk about. The first group that I will discuss is the mental health group. That's led by Graham Scott, and we're very fortunate to have Claire Hine on that group as well, who is the chair of Alzheimer's New Zealand. So she's particularly well placed for contacts and knowledge and information, and they're working together to have a look at what we've got here in Kāpiti, what is lacking and where there's a possibility of making any differences. So they're starting to draw up their program there, and they're well underway. We decided that two quite important areas, which is the health of disabled people and the health of older people, given our resources and given the fact that you have other advisory groups on both of those, that we would leave those on hold in the meantime. So really important areas, but we just think we have other things to concentrate on. Don Hahn heads up our public health group, and Iridian McCloy has been working with him on that. And he's been really fantastically busy, and he's set up a working group including Professor Barry Borman, who's very well known through in his work in public health, and Ron Tustin, who's also been involved in this area with public health. And he sent me through a report, which I've given to all of you, the meeting they've had. But they're certainly starting to look at where are the areas that we can make a difference. Liz Annandale, who is a registered nurse who has worked for a long time in our community and is also well connected through both her own contacts and her husband, who is a retired but senior Samoan police officer from New Zealand. And they've lived over in the Solomon Islands and Bougainvillea and places. So she's really well connected, both into Pacifica groups and into New Zealand groups. So we're going to look together at young people, children and young people. And that'll include that first 1,000 days, 1,000 days for children, what's needed there in that space and what is missing. Obviously, KYS is an important part of that as well. And we'll also have a look at schools. Some of the schools are doing some really useful whānau work, and particularly Kāpiti Primary School. And we've met with their people, but I think we'll follow up there and see what else is needed in the schools. So that's something else. We've set up communication. We've set up a hope-to-be monthly newsletter, which is going out to 300 or 400 people's emails, and we've done a few hard copies, and I think that there's a plan to distribute a few of those each month as well, just to let people know what's going on and what we're doing. Professor Jackie Cummings' needs assessment is just such a valuable resource, and she's continuing to make contacts and to be able to build on that. We have a transport subcommittee which was set up under Kathy some years ago, and we produced at that time a brochure. We identified that we have fabulous services in Wellington, but the difficulty for Kāpiti people is getting there. So knowing what options there were was really important, and we worked at that time to produce a brochure, and we've worked again with the people from the Ask Health Shuttle, from Kāpiti Carers, and to reproduce this. So that's now been republished. The Parapram Community Board, I understand, has contributed towards the costs of printing that, and that's being distributed as we speak. And then we did have a group looking at locality development, but given the changing political environment, that's on hold. So we'll just wait and see what needs to be done there in future. So that's a snapshot of what we have been up to, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sandra. And thank you for this document there as well. I guess from my end, this shows the importance, I guess, of formalising the CAG group and capturing the expertise that's within that group. Because it's not even a case of you guys hitting the ground running, you've already been having a lot in train and in process as such. So it's great that we can formalise this. You're starting to put your structures in place there as well. Just confirming, which I'm sure there is, you've got a good relationship with Gina and Chris as we move forward.
Could I also say that I left the best for last? Sorry, I deliberately skipped over the access to services, but we met with two of the representatives from TWO who are working in this area.
TWO, sorry, that's...
Te Whataora, sorry, Health New
Correct.
Zealand.
Yep, okay.
Down at the Kāpiti Health Centre and talked to them about what we see as the needs, and they really were not in a position to make any commitments, even to continue a relationship with us. So Ian Powell, who you all know, went straight to the top, and he spoke to Dale Bramley, who's the head, who's Tier 2 in Te Whataora, and heads up the innovation group, and talked to Dale about what we're thinking about in terms of an integrated care facility or a polyclinic or a one-stop shop. And Dale was really interested, quite excited about that, and he set up for the following week a meeting with the leaders of the top groups in Te Whataora with Ian to talk about this. So they are very engaged, they're very interested, and they're keen to sort of see where we can go to with it. So that makes our compelling case that we've been working on using the needs assessment a really important feature, because if we can get that in front of them, you know, there's a chance that at this point they will engage because their interest has been piqued by it. So that's the best news I had when I came home from holiday. I thought that was just fabulous to hear. So we will continue to work on that, and Ian's definitely committed to it.
That's fantastic. And look, good to see the key people and key in the different areas that you're setting out here as well. Again, all good quality, well, not even good quality, exceedingly high quality people that are going to get on and do some things. Just as long as, again, just making sure we got that good linkage in back with Gina and the group there as well, so we're on the same page. I'd hate for things to get ahead of ourselves in certain areas, and I think it's important that we're all moving forward at the same pace, if you like, there as well. But really appreciate the work that's going on, and really appreciate it. Nigel.
Yeah, thanks, Sandra. This is great work you guys are doing. I just wondered about, in terms of, so addressing current need is one part of it, but also addressing anticipated need. So do you, well, we've got a number of quite significant developments that are either underway or likely to get underway, and it seems to be a constant that they're not building medical centres. They're adding another 3,000 people or whatever, but they're not building a specific medical facility. So that's just going to add to the issue. So the question, I guess, is are you looking to be proactively talking with developers about what those health, you know, because you guys are in the best position to say this is what the current health needs are, this is what you're going to add, and this is what the gap's going to be. What do you suggest?
Can I maybe ask, maybe that might be a more suitable question for Chris?
Yeah.
Sorry, in support of the great work that CAG is progressing, I feel like Sandra and the team, with Gina working alongside them, is really at the stage of following your agreement to set up and establish them through the approval of the terms of reference, really get some of the fundamentals in place. So the needs assessment that that Sandra's talked about is fundamental to being able to describe that position. What I can say to you is one of the things that with council operations being alongside CAG, we're wanting to do is make sure that as we do this work, we start to link up, yes, to developers and also to ED. For economic development, to make sure that we're thinking about how we support business here as well. So that will come together, but we're at a very early stage in terms of, you know, want to get that needs assessment. And I should say, a really good needs assessment actually has been done. And I think what we're doing is looking to update that to our current position. So once we have that, we'll be able to see what the impact of today and the future, what that will look like. Did you have anything else?
No, I think that as Chris says, identifying those needs is critical, and being able to articulate it clearly with the compelling case.
And look, just building on what Nigel was talking to, I think it's also alluding that there's a lot of development, substantial development going on or about to go on or in the process of going on at the moment, just ensuring that for at the wheeling and dealing table and the argy-bargy table of negotiation from a council perspective, that the health aspect of things has been taken into consideration when we're perhaps asking for things to be built or contributions to be made. I'm comfortable that that is happening, that there is an eye on that. I do keep an eye on that one as well, but it's certainly something to keep front and centre, especially I think with a lot of moving conversations that are going on at the moment. Now we can do that also from our table too, I think, Nigel. Kathy.
Can I say something? I just want to say thank you very much to Council and Chris for, joining up with KHAG and progressing this, because it's very important, and there's a lot of older people, especially in our district, who, need improved access to health services. But just on Councillor Wilson's point, Pacific Radiology are adding on to their building and providing more services up here. So I think little by little, but I think it's just great that now, with our strategy coming together, and we'll be moving ahead, and hopefully the people of Kāpiti will be able to access health services locally in the not too distant future. So thank you.
And that bringing together of things, I think, that's very, very important. And I think also a vote of thanks to yourself as well, Kathy. You've been tenacious in this space for a very long period of time in keeping it front and centre. I think this Chinese, and we're really starting to see the fruit of that patience, shall we say, and tenacity with regards to things starting to come through. It's also keeping in mind that I've always said that I see council in that overarching role. At the end of the day, this is a government deliverable. It's not a ratepayer deliverable. We have been asked to be involved in this process. What does that look like? We don't know. But it's very, very important that we are getting ourselves into a position of advocacy, strong advocacy. And I think with the key people that we've got in here, as we just said, from around what Ian's able to achieve and that sort of thing, I think we're very, very fortunate and very, very well placed as a community in this space as we move forward. And what sort of uncertain times, we've got a new government in, we don't know where that's all going to go with regards to health, but I think we are well positioned to be pushing that equation. I think it's also a timely reminder of the importance of also keeping in touch with our 2 elected MPs. Perhaps bringing them in a little bit closer to council and what we do here. And I actually say that for our Greater Wellington Regional Council representative as well, that we sometimes leave those guys out on their own, and it's important that we do bring them in and are interfacing with them as well, because they are part of our community and a substantial part of the influence aspect that we can have as a community as well, especially if we're on the same page, or if there is some education that needs to be done and some awareness is built, so to speak. Any other questions at all? Liz down there, good to see you. Oh no, that's fantastic. Okay, well look, if there's nothing else to add, unless anything else you'd like to add at all, Sandra?
I think we've seen such a huge step forward with Chris and Gina coming on board, and that's wonderful. So we're really pleased about it. Thanks, Martin.
Fantastic. And as we've got a report coming shortly as well, the Health Strategy Direction of Travel. If you're able to stick around for that, your input into that would be much appreciated. And look, feel free to just stay at the table down there in front of the microphone if you like. Okay, thank you for that. 7.2, Kelvin. And
Kelvin's actually away, so if I can introduce 2 of our frontline staff, please. So you've met Donna Creary before, but also I'd like to introduce Fiona Birdie in the polka dot top. So Fiona and Donna do a lot of the work in the front line with our community facilities, our halls, our public toilets, that kind of stuff. And the reason I've asked Donna and Fiona to come along this morning is I want to bring to your attention a particular issue we're having at the moment with antisocial behaviour, and more specifically graffiti and vandalism in community facilities. It's not just our facilities, it's happening across the district, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit more later on. But the reason I'm bringing this to your attention is actually the underlying causes for this stuff is purely social in nature, And actually, these are social facilities that are being damaged at the moment. Now, this stuff comes and goes. Typically, it's been school holidays and sometimes elections that actually see this kind of stuff spike. But at the moment, there doesn't seem to be any easing off of the spike. That seems to be sustained. And having come from Wellington City, unfortunately, I think we might be at the point in our voyage where it's something we need to learn to live with and to manage rather than to stamp out. So I hope I'm wrong. I'd be happy to be wrong, but I think we need to think through that regardless. So Fiona and Donna are going to take you through some slides to show you exactly what it is that we're talking about. Just a heads up, some of them are a bit vulgar and rude, but you know, I just thought I'd give you a heads up, councillor, just in case you might. I wouldn't want to see you blush. So none of this stuff is particularly intelligent or arts trail material, but I'll hand over to Donna and Fiona to talk you through what we've got. And at the end, I'd like to tell you what we're thinking and what we're doing about it. We are working alongside the police and other asset owners, but it's tricky. There are some challenges, but we're giving a good nudge, okay? So over to you guys to talk us through our rogues gallery in a minute.
Thank you very much. We're just waiting for the slides to pop up. Are we nearly there?
Just having a bit of a meltdown. Go on with it.
No meltdowns necessary.
So maybe if I can just kind of fill the gaps. So one of the reasons we haven't circulated the slides is typically what the kids who do graffiti and tagging are after is notoriety. So there's been a lot of requests from community boards in particular to stick them on Facebook and whatnot so that we can figure out who's doing it. But actually, that's exactly what the kids, it's mostly boys, right? It's exactly what they're after. So we're being quite careful around that and would prefer not to do that. We'll keep monitoring, and if at some point we do need to kind of go public, then we can do that. The cops do have a little bit of success here. They famously, there's a guy called Solo who did a lot of damage around Waikanae in particular. Solo is actually a 22-year-old man with a child. So the picture you have in your head about who's doing this isn't necessarily what's actually happening. And there's another example you'll get shortly where the two boys that did the damage, I think I mentioned at the community board, Waikanae Community Board, were 10 and 12 years old. So the police asked us to attend a family conference with these boys. And I have to say the policeman did a really good job in scaring the bejesus out of them, told them they'd be banged up for years if they did it again. I think it was effective. But these were boys from good homes with their mum showed up at the family conference. They were 10 and 12. So it's not what you think with these people isn't necessarily what's actually happening. And they're not actually necessarily from bad homes and not necessarily actually from outside the district either. In fact, predominantly, I don't believe that's the case at all. So we do work with the police to try and prevent, but given that this comes back to good parenting and good social values and good civic duties, it's wider than just telling off naughty boys with a spray can or banning the sale of spray cans. But thanks, Anna. So I will hand over to Donna and Fiona to talk you through our photographs. Thank you.
Presentation, yeah. Thank you very much. So we're going to pop up shortly, Anna? Oh, we're good. Lovely. Thank you. I just couldn't see online. So you might think that we're preparing to have a sort of a trailer for a Vin Diesel movie with the headings that we have up here, but unfortunately, no. It's just about graffiti and vandalism and how it's impacting on our preventative maintenance. From the property team, we're incredibly proud of the assets that we maintain and the work that we do, and so it is really kind of a little bit soul destroying to see that things are getting damaged so badly. So we've got some slides to show you of some examples of the damage. It's not comprehensive. We have actually, with apologies for the pun, we've sanitized the slides a little bit because I'm sure you don't need to see, as Mike said, not very good examples. The first example we have is from the Waikanae Park. Sorry, apologies. Which buttons?
Can you click us through, Anna?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you. So this is a Waikanae Park Ave toilets, and this was the men's toilets in August, where a couple of young lads went in with rocks and just smashed smashed all of the toilets and the basins and the pipework and everything. There was just a whole bunch of porcelain all over the toilets. Those two lads were caught, as Mike indicated, just young fellas, and they have entered into a restorative justice process. But unfortunately, we don't often catch them, so that's one example. The next slide, thank you, Anna, is unfortunately the same toilets a week later after we had repaired and replaced all of the fixtures and the fittings in the toilet. So they were tagged by somebody else, essentially. So all the good work that was done the week before had essentially been essentially been torn down. The fittings themselves were okay, but they were all tagged, which required significant washdowns and everything. The next slide I'm going to hand over to the lovely Fiona. And Fiona is really on the coalface of organising all of the contractors to bring everything back to how it started. So she has firsthand all of the conversations and unfortunately the photos, so her eyes are bleeding a little bit, but she'll go.
Good morning. The first one is Waikanai Edgewater toilets, which are down on the riverbank in Waikanai. And for me, this is an example from what I've seen in the past is more like a random act of vandalism, because they've obviously just gone in and just decided to kick a couple of walls in. But then there might only be a couple of holes in a wall, but it is a cost to fix that with the contractors and the materials and the painting, etc. And then moving on to McLean Park. So this one is more of an example down at McLean Park at Paparan Beach, where this is more antisocial behaviour, where they hang out around the park, the toilets, and it includes alcohol and drug taking, and really just making a general mess, which is a shame for those that have to come in and use the facility after them. And also they are a threat to the cleaners. If the cleaners come in, they have to sort of walk away because they don't want to have any confrontation with people doing this sort of antisocial behaviour. And then moving on to Pycock toilets, corner of Beach Road and Wellington Road. So this is right in the township, so it's a high-use toilet block, males, female and disabled. And this has become a high-use area with the escarpment opening a few years ago. People coming in more to the area, use it before or after going on the track, and also there's more of a cafe scene down there now, so it does get a lot of use. And unfortunately over that and prior to the escarpment, a lot of graffiti, windows being smashed, the whole piping into the toilet's been ripped out, so it's been having to be replaced. Yep. So then moving on to Pycock, down at Campbell Park toilets, along the parade there. These are an old toilet block, pretty, quite antiquated old toilet block, which had a mural on that was painted about 10 years ago. And the last bit of vandalism down there and graffiti, they'd totally done inside and outside the toilet blocks. So that involved a major repaint inside and out and removal of the mural, unfortunately. But the murals do have a lifespan, so that was in conjunction, the mayor knew about it. We sent out comms so that we wouldn't get any feedback on that. So that was all repainted, and then within the week it was done again by the same sort of graffiti we could tell from what they'd used. So with the permission of Mike, we closed the toilets down for 10 days, just to try and take the heat off the repeat offenders coming into that area. And then we opened it up again on the Friday for the Pride Festival that was being held at Pycock. And as at today, I haven't had any more feedback whether there's been any further graffiti. So closing them off may have actually been a bit of a deterrent. And then moving on to the Kaitara Reserve toilets, which are over the railway line at Paparan up the hill. So this is another example of antisocial behaviour in more of a isolated area, because you go down a little walkway to the toilet block within the park, and just hanging out, just being a disturbance to other users in that area. Yeah, so just examples of what goes on out there.
In that particular example, they actually stuffed the toilet bowl with toilet paper and set it on fire. And yeah, as you can see, they've ripped off the towel dispenser and knocked over the sandy bin, and yeah, it's nasty, nasty stuff. You know, very unsavoury and unsafe for anybody entering the toilets as well.
And on that note, sorry, and I'd just like to say that the cleaners, when they see a situation like this, they go in and they clean it up and they do a very, very good job. So we do have good cleaners out there, which is nice.
Yeah, unfortunately, they may face things like defecation on the walls and on the change tables and all those type of things. So there, you know, it's a significant sanitation issue, and you know, thank you very much to the cleaners who, of course, have to face all that. So not nice. I'm just moving on now to Mahara Place. So this happened. That's actually the north-facing wall, but there's a similar on the other opposite-facing wall. That was the week before Toi Mahara opening, and so we needed to get onto that particularly smartly because obviously we wanted Mahara Place to look as best as possible. Hadn't had that issue up there before, so it was unfortunate that it was prior to that, and I'm sure it was no accident in that regard. But yeah, that was a significant wall, or two significant walls that needed to be washed out so that we could have it looking good. Then the next one is Raumati South Hall. So this is the rear of Raumati South Memorial Hall. So this is the rear of the hall, right along the back. Unfortunately, it was a week before we installed security fencing along where the retaining wall was, but the security fencing was really to prevent people from climbing on the roof from the retaining wall. But it could have potentially prevented that particular graffiti. But unfortunately, that location too is very prone to it. We often have it in the front and around where the decking is and the tennis courts and the retaining wall. So that's a prime location, unfortunately. The next one is not as recent. It was actually last year, and this is a Tasman Road toilet in Otaki. So a vehicle was stolen and ran into the toilet block, and then they set fire to the car, which cooked all of the componentry in the toilet, essentially. Because it's an older toilet, it took quite a long time to actually get the parts to actually get it functional again, and so that toilet was out of action for about 6 months. So there's that whole loss of service aspect that we have too. We can't have them open when they're wrecked. So yeah, that was a pretty bad one, and a very, very expensive one as well. We're talking close to $70,000 to restore that to working order, sadly. So it's not just us, of course. You know, everyone's getting affected. Mike found this photo, which has a strong sense of irony in it, if you can spot the irony there.
So to be fair to Kiwi Rail, they have actually had a go at removing that tag. If you have a look when you drive just down by Raumati on the old state highway, unfortunately they've ruined the mural. If you can't read that, it says graffiti eradication scheme on the two big signs on the left and right. But the point of this one is this is a Kiwi Rail asset. We really had to jump up and down and scream bloody murder at Kiwi Rail to get them to do that, because they will only remove graffiti that's offensive in nature. So we might need to elicit your support or the Mayor's support to actually correspond at the highest level with outfits like Waka Kotahi, Kiwi Rail and GW if they're not actually kind of doing what we're doing with respect to maintaining their own assets.
Thank you. And so it's not just the graffiti and the vandalism, it's also theft. So things like solar systems from the roof get pinched, ventilation systems, the infinity units get stolen if there are any, and of course the old copper pipes, which are very popular, the theft items. So it's not just about vandalism. And the typical, but with the vandalism, typical types of damage, please, that we see that may not be obvious is that oftentimes the locks are damaged. So people, either they break in there or they just smash the locks for the sake of it. Soap dispensers, we go through probably close to 50 soap dispensers a year. They actually just get either knocked off for the sake of it, or they get taken quite prevalently too sometimes in some of the freedom camping spots where there's lots and lots of use, sort of at all hours of the day. And broken glass, so they'll often break windows and that kind of thing as well, which might not have been obvious through the rest. So when we're thinking about mitigation, so what are we doing? So what's recommended is that we action or get rid of if it's graffiti, we get rid of it as soon as possible. So that happens as soon as we can get the painters or the cleaners on board, which is generally the next business day. Also, things like murals tend to not, with the exception of the one that we just had tagged, unfortunately, murals tend to not be tagged. So there is some social warmth around that, I guess would be one way of saying it. We also remove barriers where we can. So if there was, for instance, trees blocking entrances or blocking where people could do tagging, we've removed trees. Another example of where someone filled up a toilet with the rocks that were outside or the stones that were outside, we've removed the rocks and concreted the path and things like that. And then, so future planning, though, we're thinking about when we're putting in new facilities, we'll recess the fixtures. So the towel holder and the sandy bins and the toilet roll holders will be recessed into the wall, which will help to prevent them being pulled out. Less electronics, so more manual features on things like on doors, so that they can't be broken. And just creating, where possible, more open space so that they don't have little hidey holes. People don't have hidey holes to come and do their work and not be seen. If we're thinking about the impact, there isn't a slide for this, but they're just thinking about the impact. It's multi-level. So, of course, there's a huge financial burden, so it's all unplanned maintenance stuff, and that can certainly add up. The disruption in service for the community, that's significant. I mentioned the Tasman Road one, that was months. Generally, it's not that long, but when you think oftentimes the toilets are in quite isolated spots, there just isn't anywhere handy to go. So that's a real disruption for them. Reputationally, we want everything to look beautiful and tidy and clean, and it's important for us to make sure that everything looks like that. And so I think it can look like we don't care, or we're not looking after things, which is absolutely not true. And then, of course, I think there's a well-being aspect of it too. So it's frustrating, and it's quite heartbreaking at times when we're doing all this work and improving things and bringing things up to scratch, and it's just getting knocked down and tagged, and not just for us, but for our contractors as well, who come in and do this good work, and they're proud of their work as well, and so it's really hard on them too. So it's a multifaceted, complex issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. So just to wrap up, subcommittee members, so it's pretty grim and depressing when you see it through this lens, but we are over time trying to change things like our design. So we're trying to standardise on things like exilus, like the new one at Mahara Place. Typically, those designs are modular, cheaper to maintain, and actually harder to damage. Like they still find ways to damage them, but over time, as we can kind of shift our assets to be more modern like that, there's a bunch of stuff around accessibility, maintenance, and privacy that are actually much better with those ones rather than the old dunnies, the old-fashioned ones like at Paikakariki. So over time, as we upgrade and renew our assets, we are looking at design, also looking at lighting and things like murals, as Donna and Fiona have said. And that stuff will all help, but I just want to be realistic that the root cause of this is not just through design and lighting. There are much more sinister and profound issues that cause this stuff to happen in the first place. A couple of final things is, so our cleaners are real heroes. We're really pleased that they are now on a living wage, at least, for goodness sake, given what they do for us. And secondly, and I don't want to talk about it in too much detail in public, but CCTV is another weapon in our arsenal that we are currently exploring with a view to improving our performance in this area. Over.
Sobering stuff. And, those figures, sometimes they're small figures, but they add up very, very quickly, especially when you add the one-off larger ones in that mix as well.
So far this year, we think it's between $50,000 and $100,000, because we haven't got all the bills in yet. But so far this year, that's how much it's cost us. That's just us,
Just checking, is that this financial year?
this financial year.
So that's since July.
Yeah.
Okay, that puts it in perspective quite nicely, or unnicely. Is there any questions around any of this? Johnny?
Yeah, thanks, Mike and your team. Look, my question is, you've said that the police have managed to catch some of these people. Now, is there any sort of reparations sought from these people that are caught? Because, I mean, obviously it's causing significant sort of cost to us as a council. So, and I'm just wondering if the justice isn't asking for that reparation, is there civil action that the council can take to recoup funds?
So when we deal with the police, one of the first questions they ask us is how much does this damage cost? And in the case of that one I was telling you about before, the 10 and 12-year-old boys and their parents, the damage, 10 grand's worth of damage, I think, but they were asked to make a $100 payment. But it's worth pointing out that, I mean, this is 10 and 12-year-olds. You could go after the parents, but actually in both those cases, the parents' ability to pay is pretty diminished as well. So short answer is that the justice system will do what the justice system does. Generally speaking, it won't recover the cost for us. Now, in terms of civil action, it's not something we've looked at in any depth, but my gut reaction is that the cost of civil action will probably greatly outweigh the benefits and any money we might get back, understanding that generally speaking, the kids don't have a lot of money, or the perpetrators don't have a lot of money to actually pay us back with anyway. There is a wider question around insurance and whether we can insure for this kind of stuff. So I'm looking at that with Mark DeHaast at the moment as to whether we can't do better with our self-insurance fund to somehow build that up to help offset some of these costs.
Johnny's got a response there.
Yeah, I'm just sort of thinking of more of a sort of deterrent for people. If we actually go after somebody that's caused significant cost, and if there's a significant, I guess, consequences for it, then that might actually be a deterrent for others for that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think if the police were able to secure a conviction and a judge was able to, as part of the conviction, require reparations, I think that is something that we would absolutely leverage to make sure the message gets out, is that there are consequences to your actions. Unfortunately, we haven't got that yet. So far, it's all been about diversion and not getting into the court system. Understanding, I guess, Johnny, that some of these kids are actually vulnerable kids. So there's a whole sort of social aspect to this as well, and as to how much, and I guess that's why we have an independent justice system that doesn't just sort of go for the jugular, as I can see in your eyes.
That's great. Who's next? I've got Kathy over there, have I?
Thank you. Just wondering, do you find, does it happen more often in the daytime, the evenings, more on school holidays or weekends, or is there any, have you got any analysis of that type of when it happens?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Historically, it used to peak in the school holidays, but however, more recently, and it's one of the reasons that we hear, is that there just doesn't seem any rhyme or reason when it's happening. So yeah, it's just continuously, and not particularly school holidays at all.
Right.
And we assume that it's generally sort of later in the evening as opposed to during the daytime, when they'd be more visible. Yeah.
No, I forgot to say that our loos are generally locked from dawn to, open from dawn to dusk.
Yeah.
So this stuff isn't happening in the still of the night. This stuff's happening.
I know, but the toilets at Paraparamia Beach are actually really easy to get into. I'll tell you how afterwards. So Mike, this is just pushing my barrow. why we need an indoor sports and recreation centre for our young people in Kāpiti, so they put the energies into good stuff and not the other stuff. It won't solve everything, but I'm just pushing this indoor sports and rec centre, as you can guess.
Thanks, Councillor.
But it is a good reason why because if young people are looking for somewhere to go and something to do, it's better they, put it into sports or something than destroying graffitiing our communities.
The other idea is to give those kids an outlet for their creative by allowing them to paint in places. So the guy that the cops caught in Waikanai, we're trying to get him to paint the reservoir at Waikanai.
Yeah.
Do you know Theo's stuff, Theo Araj, the famous?
Yes.
So instead of doing crappy stuff like you saw, is to actually turn it into something that is actually
That's
kind
really
of
good. Yeah,
actually
that's
quite
right.
creative.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of those service things, those green boxes all around our district. We could get young people doing some artwork
Yeah,
on.
so those aren't ours, those are electrical, but they're pretty good at that. But we've got lots of reservoirs and walls where we can get these guys to do stuff. So we've got 2 or 3 on the go at the moment. There's a reservoir in Paikakariki, that one at the entrance. There's a reservoir in Waikanai, and actually we're talking to Te Aotearoa about that wall behind the marae in Waikanai.
Oh, okay. And there's a reservoir going up in Otaki too.
Is there? Thanks, Councillor.
Cool, Lawrence.
It's a complex issue in dealing with this, and I agree that there are major social issues here. I would say from my experience with Paraparaumu College, we have some serious issues internally during school time of vandalism in our bathrooms. So it's not just something that council is facing, it is happening across the board, and it's not just related to school holidays, as you've already said. So I think it is a wider issue that we're facing across our community, and I don't know the answers to it, but I appreciate the fact that you're raising this with us. I also think that it may be related to the fact that at the moment within New Zealand we are facing attendance issues at our colleges, where we have an increased amount of truancy and those who aren't attending like they normally would have. So our percentages of non-attendance across our colleges is higher than it ever has been. So that will probably be contributing to the fact that this stuff is happening in times where it hasn't happened before.
And I guess even building on that, it's looking at those tools and mechanisms we can use to address this. Work Ready Kāpiti is looking at a mentoring program for senior college students, which could be a good pathway to helping address this sort of scenario as well. But we shall see, Nigel. And just bearing in mind, I'm just keeping an eye on the time as well, so that we've got enough for
Just that I'm not going to pile on our young people, because the 22-year-old father is a complete dickhead if he's doing this kind of stuff. So I hope that message is out there. Porirua City Council have a person who drives around full-time in a van with lots of different paint. I saw her operating one day. It's just fantastic, actually. And they work on the theory that we've got more paint than you do. And so there's a person who's, like I say, they've got the whole regime colour charts in the back of the thing with all the gear. And in some cases it's cleaning, in some cases it's just repainting, But that's a full-time position. So given that it's cost us 100K, so I don't know. That's just a suggestion that we might be looking at doing something like that. Also, our own billboards, our signed billboards that we have. Well, when those billboards are down, there's signs on there. So wake up or whatever it is. Don't be, some kind of messaging in there. So that's kind of a free messaging for, so I don't know whether that hasn't gone. So that's happened for a long time. So we as a council, every time one of those billboards comes off, we are saying to these people, here you go, now here's your free messaging. So I would really like to see those gone. But that's our own stuff that we can control, but we don't until we put something over it. But it's not something there all the time.
Generic community board promotional signs, I thought would have been good for that.
Oh, absolutely. I think there should be
just
some
hooked on when
generic.
those spaces are empty.
Angled community sign boards. If you take the legitimate advert off there, sometimes
Yeah.
one there's graffiti
there's one on the corner of Te Moana Road, down on Kāpiti Road. We've got a few of them around,
We'll have a look at it.
around the region, so I think that's worth a look
I
at.
think it's just, it's one of those points of keeping them covered. So even if there's some generic boards that can go up advertising some council activity, I was thinking even the community boards or something like that, until that advertising space is actually then rebooked.
And-
Just get that option down.
And also wondered, so we obviously have the responsibility for our own stuff. I take Mike's point entirely. I think we need to really get the message through to Waka Kotahi, to Kiwi Rail and GW. I personally contacted Waka Kotahi about the graffiti that was on the bridges. They built all these bridges, and they went, "Oh, they're fantastic." And I went, "You're an idiot. You can't see graffiti when you're driving over it. Go get down where we live and have a look, right?" It's appalling. Anyway, so I had a little private stoush with them. So they have actually cleaned up some of them, and they've said they had a program that they were going to be doing. So I'm personally going to follow that up as well. That was from more of a media thing than a council thing. But yeah, ditto for Kiwi. At one stage, the rail bridge in Waikanai, I was on regional council at the time and got Kiwi Rail to, they were fantastic actually. They actually came out and painted the whole thing. It was fantastic. Unfortunately, it sort of provided a canvas for the graffiti. And in that regard, you have to give them some admiration. I mean, that's climbing out there on that bloody rail bridge to paint that stuff presumably upside down is a bit of a skill. So maybe some abseiling people or whatever get a hold of them. But and the last bit I had was about around commercial property. So we've got, if you want to see just absolutely, it's appalling, completely third world look. Go down Toronto Drive, down the end of Toronto Drive, and right along the it's just graffiti. There's a fish and chip shop, and then and it's just appalling. It just looks absolutely third world. What do we do about that? Because it's, we want to keep Kāpiti beautiful, but that's presumably commercial premises. So what rights do we have to say to them, hey, you got to clean this crap up because it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And there's a really substantial amount of it. So how much say do we have? I just made a note here, like Chamber of Commerce and Business Associations. Maybe we could be talking to them, and then they could be talking to their members, and just so that they're aware of it.
So I've been around this for a while. We don't have any legal rights.
No.
People want they probably look like crap. They're quite entitled to do that. Yeah. But what we do have is the power to influence and convene, and in some cases provide a service. But if we were to do that, we just got to be really careful that we are improving private property, and where do you stop and where do you not stop. So there are some complexities around that, and I far prefer if we pulled our influencing levers rather than regulatory ones, or actually providing the service.
Yeah. And that's what I mean about the likes of the Chamber of Commerce and various business associations, that they, that maybe they are members, or maybe because they're in that commercial space and they can apply pressure that we as a council probably can't apply. Ditto for private property, I guess, on people's fences and things. So whether we offer to assist where we can. The worst of it is when it's just wood fences, and you paint on that, and now what do? You paint the whole bloody fence?
Yeah, so it looks worse if you try and scratch
and
it.
sometimes it just looks worse, right? Yeah, so but anyway, thank you, Fiona and Donna. Great work and tough gig. Yeah.
Look, just following on, Mike, did you have any comment about the Pororua vehicle?
Yes, so I just observed that we're not in the same ballpark as Pororua yet, but unfortunately we're tracking that way. Pororua have done a number of clever things. They got a bunch of grannies. I forget what they're called, the granny angels or something. And that was really key because A, they were painting out the stuff, but B, the grandkids saw the grannies painting out the stuff and were kind of embarrassed into not doing the stuff. The thing is, though, that these things, you've got to keep refreshing these things and keep working on it, because there's no magic bullet here, right? So grannies, actually the mongrel mob was involved in Pororua for a while. There was a kind of deal done, and part of the deal was that the mongrel mob would make sure that that kind of stuff did, and for a while that worked, but none of these things is enduring, right? So it's with us now, and we've got to figure out how we deal to it. And if councillors want to you know, if we want to kind of resource up for this and increase our level of service, just being really careful around that, because it's I'd far prefer that we're all on board, the whole community was on board, rather than it becoming our responsibility. I don't think we can solve it. I think the whole community, as Lawrence was saying, I think the whole community needs to be behind it.
Thanks, Mike. Two things I guess want to add to that conversation. I think there's a role here for business associations. I think we'll call it observation rather than surveillance. Is relatively inexpensive now with regards to having some networks set up that they can monitor in their own way. I appreciate this privacy issue and that sort of scenario, but we have our cameras protecting our assets, if you like. There's no reason that business associations can't have little networks protecting their assets, so to speak, and if it just so happens we can utilise some of that that surveillance at a later stage, would be quite handy. I do wonder if there's also a room for sort of moving cameras or something, stealth surveillance in some of these areas. Again, respecting that getting cameras anywhere near toilets is always a controversial sort of thing.
Can I just say yes?
Cool, I'll leave it at that.
Yep,
If
thanks.
people need to know anything else. Look, I just wanted to know whether there was potentially a... I've got a recommendation here that the Social Sustainability Committee notes the update. Look, I was actually going to take that a step further. I'm wondering whether there is a resolution here that we put asking the Mayor to correspond with the identified stakeholders, but primarily Greater Wellington, Kiwi Rail and Waka Kotahi, with regards to addressing graffiti and damage as it occurs on their assets in our community, as per their own policies. I'm assuming they do have policies around this, which perhaps aren't being adhered to. And one, addressing this issue; two, removal of the graffiti; and three, repairs of the assets affected in a timely manner. What's the table's thought about that? Yeah, because this will be what we're tending to find, these recommendations that get picked up at council meetings and then acted on per se. So this is just us informing the Mayor. This is a recommendation that we'd like to see you address as such. Deputy Mayor Kirby, you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I think I was just I just wrote down the question of how do we motivate the community to have the conversation around this kind of thing, because I think I was interviewed on Access Radio just 3 weeks ago, and this was one of the questions, was what are we doing about graffiti? And so I think, and I was able to reassure that council was actively involved in that space as much as we can. But I think it is a conversation that we need to motivate, and so, you know, maybe it's a conversation or something in terms of a recommendation that we put to our elected members, that whatever comms that they're doing within the community, whether it be social media, whether it be articles in the paper, that somewhere at some time there's some sort of an elevation of this as being an ongoing issue across our community, so that the conversation and the awareness increases, because I think people see it, but then they don't really know what to do about it, or if they can do anything about it.
I guess that's it will be coming through as part of our maybe a long-term plan conversation, how we address this in the issue. The resolution here was to really go for those three key stakeholders who to be dragging their heels a little bit in this space, and I think council officers could use maybe some support with our Mayor, just touching base with these particular organisations, just to help with that engagement.
I was noticing the other day that a property that I'm involved with has a bit of graffiti on one of the fences that's been there for a few weeks. And it is sometimes for private organisations, it is mobilising, one, the resource to be able to do it, and two, the right person who's going to be able to fix the issue. And you don't want to create a canvas for more. So sometimes there's some creative solutions maybe we need to look at around how we can, some of those canvases, how we can create some murals, do something creative around that will reduce the opportunity for people to...
Nigel, your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, I'm just happy to move the recommendations, because I think it's there are going to be some potentially financial implications in this. So I think we should certainly escalate this. So I'm happy to move those. You'd need to move, presumably. I mean, it's a noting paper. The recommendation. There's just the one.
You're wanting to add some...
That we're noting this, providing feedback.
Yeah, look, sorry, I was just having a quick chat here. Look, there's the recommendations to receive the report per se and to follow through on that. Were you happy with the a resolution that I was talking to with regards to asking the Mayor to sort of hit those three stakeholders up,
Yeah,
per se, just as a step at this stage. If that's the case, the table's happy with that, then I'll get officers to word that up. We'll look at it at the end. I just don't want to, we could take 5 minutes now, but I'm just conscious of the time as such. So we'll come back and move that resolution at the end, if you like, and we'll jump to the next presentation, if the table's okay with that. Yep, okay, we'll do that then. Thank you very much. To council officers. Yeah, I can give you a hand for that in a sec. I'll just get this presentation under the way. I'll quickly rewrite it a bit easier. Okay. Righty-o. Papers everywhere. We'll come back to 7.2 at the end of the meeting. So we'll move on to 8.1, Health Strategy, Direction of Travel, Council's role and proposed areas of focus. And I'm picking that's Gina and Chris, or just Gina. Oh, no, Gina and Chris, sorry. Right, so we've had this information come through to us. Bearing in mind, this is an ongoing piece of work. As such, fantastic to actually see it happening as such. So please take it away.
Thank you very much, Councillor. You will be aware that we previously presented a bit of an outline of the health strategy to this group on the 14th of September. And we, on Tuesday, went to Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti as well to seek their advice on how they would like to engage with this work and the other strategies that we have ongoing. So they will obviously be incorporated in the approach we're taking to the strategy. What we've got here is some of the existing thinking that we've got in this space that we're keen to get the group's feedback on. So in Appendix 1, we have a little bit about Council's role and particularly focused on the legislative backing for the role that we have. Some of that, or a lot of that, is in the public health space, and there's a little bit as well in the role that we are leaning into, which is part of what you heard Sandra talk about earlier from the Kāpiti Health Advisory Group and the work that they're doing in access to services here in Kāpiti. And we've also got a little bit of the areas of focus. So what are the impacts that we want to achieve and how might we go about doing that at a high level? We've also got a couple of questions there that we're intending to ask the community when we go about consultation. As well as that, we will be looking to engage with key stakeholders. So we'll do a little bit of that on the content of the direction of travel document, but the majority of that will be in the new year. Using the direction of travel document to inform that. One of the things we're looking at doing, the Kāpiti Health Advisory Group, I understand a few years ago, held a forum with providers. We're looking at potentially running something similar again to get a bit of discussion going on what is the picture of people who are providing services in the community and to build the relationships in that space as well. So what we're looking for from you today is your feedback on anything else that you think should be incorporated in this material before we go out for engagement. Anything else that you think we should ask the community or stakeholders. Yeah, I think that covers it. Happy to take questions.
I might also note that when we get to the point of holding a forum, you will be invited. So we're not going to exclude you. You'll form part of that and have the opportunity to hear from, so I guess our key health providers and stakeholders in that space directly.
Sorry, and I'll also add that we did take this material to an interactive briefing with Council on the 24th, and you'll see in there, I think it's about page 18 on the agenda, some of the feedback that we received that we'll be incorporating from that as well.
Any questions, anyone? Kathy? Sorry, I'm just rewriting this.
No, that's okay. No, I cannot remember where I read it in here because I can't find it at the moment, but I just made to make sure that, it needs to be publicly funded. To me, that's of paramount importance because it's good, that providers are coming into Kāpiti at the moment, but some of them are private. But I think it's really important that our community has access to publicly funded health services. that was just my point to emphasise that.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. The public health services are our key relationship.
Yeah, I might add to that and say one of the things we've been exploring is private providers who offer public services, as well as many of those same providers also offer private services. So they are the same people. And so our comments about making sure that we can support, well, they are, being able to support the businesses who come into our community, making sure that there is enough public service provided across the health spectrum in this community. And I think I had mentioned to a couple of you that there's a charitable hospital in Christchurch who's shifting into Wellington, and they were chatting to us about the idea of even pro bono charitable hospital and where that fits the Wellington space. It's all very early days, but I guess the point is definitely about public service, definitely about having the right balance, and definitely looking at the opportunity. And earlier in this forum we talked a little bit about developers and where they fit. And I think one of the interesting things we were kind of thinking about was, when we are thinking about the needs in the community, maybe thinking about whether we are building or want someone to contribute to a building that has theatre facilities in it, or meets the specifications for it, might be something that we could think about in the longer term, so that we're actually putting our first sort of step forward, rather than waiting for Te Whatu Ora or whatever entity that becomes through the next sort of couple of years, waiting for them to be ready to do that. So there's some opportunity there, and a lot to talk about and explore, I think. Yeah.
Nigel.
Yeah,
We'll get down to you, Sandra.
Just in terms of
But
stakeholders.
keep your button down. Sorry.
I'll go back to the developers, because I'm assuming them as stakeholders. When they build these developments and bring in hundreds and if not thousands of people, and a substantial number of those people won't be coming from Kāpiti. When we talk about the growth of the 30,000 growth, it's not us having 30,000 more babies, it's people coming in. So they won't have a doctor. There's a number of people in Kāpiti now who don't have a doctor, can't get one. So it's unless we want a health crisis here, when every single development, large or small, it should be a component part. How are they going to deal with that, with the health need of the people coming in here? Because it's actually going to be, it is a problem now, but it's going to get a lot worse. This current government, the lot that have just come in, already policy positions would suggest that they are going to drive increasingly towards private health providers. The idea of charity hospitals isn't new, of course. It started in Dickensian London back in the day when we had a formalised form of feudalism. We have it again, but we just don't call it that anymore. So I'm always cautious about that. It's the same thing with food banks. Food banks just do a wonderful thing, but the fact that we have to have food banks in a country that is basically a farm is absolutely an abomination and should be called out for that. So it's the same thing with charity hospitals. To me, that's kind of like it's almost a validation of the privatisation of health, because we've got the charity stuff for the poor people. Right? So developers are the people who will cause the health crisis for us by growing the number of people without growing health facilities. So that's where we have to be very, very cautious.
May I respond and just note, I think it's a great point around how health and development fits together. And not today, but soon, we'll be bringing just some proposal around development contributions policy. And one of the areas that we are keen to talk about and look at is community infrastructure and what that is. So we're getting some advice, some legal advice at the moment around that term, community infrastructure, and what it can include, or clearly wouldn't. But outside of that, a lot of conversation with the developers is actually what is it we need in the community. So I think there's a really strong opportunity for us through our master planning to say, actually, these are the kinds of things we want in our community if it's growing, and to maybe look at that as an opportunity to have more upfront negotiations around that, rather than waiting for one-off things to happen and then saying, hey, this would be good. So we could be really purposeful about how we use that going forward. And I would say, and hopefully not appropriately, that the charitable hospital said to us that they felt the fact that there was a need for a charitable hospital was more a commentary about the availability of public health services than it wasn't being privatised. So they felt that they needed to be in place because public health services were not meeting the needs of communities, and that the people who were the most worse off were missing out. And so some of the things that they were talking about were in the public service being able to get one cataract done, but not meeting the very, very high threshold for your other one. And just small things like that. So really meaningful things to people's lives. And so I think more conversation on that, but it's kind of an interesting commentary given our population base, where we do have a higher than average older proportion of people in the community who may well be missing out on some of those things. So that was just the reason I thought I'd drop it in as just a comment. But I think, Sandra, you wanted to comment on that, did you? Yeah.
Hang on, Sandra. The light will go red. Nigel, if I could ask you to just turn your one off, it'd be great, thanks. Just give it a second there, Sandra. There we
Yeah,
go.
nobody hears me anyway. I've got a soft voice. I just didn't want you to think that we had closed our eyes to the possibility of private investors, to developers and people who can also come into the community and make a significant contribution to the health services. We're working with Te Whara Oro initially at this stage, but we are certainly also, open to looking at all the other possibilities we can help advocate for.
Thank you for that, Sandra. I think it brings up a very valid point. One, it's fantastic that we're having these conversations. They are on the radar, they are being talked to, and they are being considered, which I think is fantastic. You make some very, very valid points here, Nigel, and which we'll keep front and centre in our ongoing conversations as well. But the pathways are there, and we've created the pathways for addressing these issues, which I think are robust. We have to wait and see how they will develop, but I think we are proactively heading in the right direction rather than the direction dictating where we go, so to speak. Nigel, you had a further comment there, did you?
Yeah, just a final point for me is that as Chris alluded to before, you've got very often, whether it's a private service or a public service, it's the same person delivering it, except the differences in the cost. In Kāpiti, the whole of Kāpiti area there is one psychiatrist who's here part-time, and anyone who's been to a climate environment committee, just that alone would tell you that there's a need for several more. The how we deal with that as a community, how we advocate for that, I'm not quite sure, because if a psychiatrist can charge $750 a session and be fully booked, why would they be doing it? Well, I mean, they're still getting paid in the public system, but it's the public system is disincentivised to provide that service or to provide more people. So I can see a constant and ongoing advocacy role for us. And maybe even if there are consulting rooms that we are able to provide, so that they can somewhere to come. It's not, you're not building a health facility, but you're building a consulting room where they can, for the older population.
And like an important part of that's also we're doing our needs assessment, getting an understanding what we do and don't have in the district, so that we aren't doubling up and we are filling in gaps. But that also comes into our ongoing role, which I think is going to be strong in advocacy as well. I think we're setting ourselves up well for that too. Kim.
Kia ora. Less of a question and more of a request. You mentioned that KHAG had a forum with stakeholders previously, and you're about to have one. Is there any way to get a list of who was involved in that forum?
Happy to circulate that to you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So from memory, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's that the original work was done around 2000, and so the idea being that it's now
Build on that.
2023, we want to build on that.
Yeah.
And so it is about just mentioning the forum that we want to bring together. I think that will be a basis to make sure that we're getting the right input from the right people as well as we keep going. So Sandra did mention that Jackie's doing a fantastic work in that space. She is a health economist and is bringing that kind of lens to it around the analysis, but making sure we've got all the data we need and the information we need, and we're really understanding not the sort of average, but for each part of our community and the different groups that we've got the right picture will be really important.
Yeah, no, so I'd like to see that list if I could. Thanks. That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Definitely.
And it's also that whole scenario of mana whenua, also with regards to Māori health aspect as well. We know that there is a couple of health groups set up. We've also got the issue with the boundary and how old taki is addressed. I fully respect and appreciate, and we've voiced this into the support for the mahi that they're doing up that way in this space, which is very, very good, but we need to be making sure we capture it as well as part of our ongoing involvement in this space, I guess. And look, that hasn't really been clarified how that's all going to happen yet. We're still, it's a bit of a work in progress. But again, we are proactively working in those spaces. So for me, that's an absolute bonus. Are there any other questions there at all? Something I wouldn't mind highlighting a little bit. And sorry, Sorka, I'm not putting you on the spot or anything like that at all. But we do need to be looking at maybe from that youth perspective of how that we get maybe some youth feed into this as well. Maybe Sorka, that's something you could have a chat with Sophie about, and we can maybe even I could even maybe work with the youth council or something, and some pathways that we can do something like that. But it's always nice to have that youth perspective in there as well. We can perhaps have a think about how we can bring that in, but we can take that offline. Would be great, but just giving you a heads up on that would be a good conversation to have. Johnny, you've got something you'd like to?
Yeah, I mean, look, often we've sort of talked about hospital facilities here up on the coast and that, but I mean, over the last 3 years, I mean, I think the health system has actually got a little bit more broken.
You reckon?
And in the middle of a pandemic, we actually sacked medical staff, which didn't seem to make sense to me. But primary health care is where I think we need to be sort of, and I'm just wondering what we're doing as far as advocating for primary health care before people actually require hospital care and stuff like that. I mean, at the moment, if I want to get a doctor's appointment, I'm having to wait for 2 or 3 weeks before I can even get in. So it's something we really need to sort of push for that, better primary health care so that people actually are better before they, get the help that they need before they actually get sick.
Well, look, it's a very valid point, Johnny, and we talk about the 4 well-beings. We also talk about how we integrate that to our general planning. I look at our building for growth strategies around all that sort of stuff. That's about, as I said, social engineering is not the right word. That's about how we where we position things, where our need is, and how we plan for that in the future. Part of it is who supplies what, and that comes back to the advocacy role there as well. And perhaps, Chris, you'd like to comment on that too.
Yeah, I thought I might add to it. Valid points and concerns. We believe that our best way forward is to be able to articulate our needs so that we can share that with other people. So unfortunately, the issues that we are experiencing are nationwide issues, and without evidence of saying, actually, for example, we have 1 midwife left in Waikanae. Someone told me that the other week, so we've got a psychiatrist challenge and a midwife challenge, just as an example. Being able to say we've got a growing population of, I make this up, 3,000 people in Waikanae, for example, we might be expecting to need midwifery services over the next 5 years. One person isn't going to be able to do that all. What will we do? Also, I think from a business perspective, I do keep coming back to this. How can we make being in Kāpiti the place to be? How do we incentivise what is a very specialised and hard to get workforce to want to live in our community? And I think that might be another really important conversation we have here and with the community about how we make people with those services want to live in Kāpiti. And I'll give you an example. Heart surgeons happen to live in the very, very lower part of the South Island. You wouldn't believe it, but that is where they are. When people have suggested they might like to move to other parts of the country, they've suggested that they might also like to move overseas. So they like living there for whatever reason they do. Well, I'm just saying, is I think you can think about what are the incentives for people to want to be here. So I think we have an opportunity to think in that workforce space around what makes Kāpiti, and in fact, even just the West Coast, some place that people in those roles would like to be. And that might be the other side of this, because if we have staff to deliver things, the facilities make sense. If there's no one to do those services, we would just have a facility. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, and I think Sandra did mention that, I think helpfully Te Whatu Ora is having some good conversations with us, and I think there's some wider people in Te Whatu Ora who would be valuable to engage, even in the mental health space. I think there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of shared concerns about some of these things that we might be able to lean into to see if through some collective action we can get some progress going. It's not an easy topic.
No. Look, I'm going to look for a mover for this in just a moment. But thank you very much. I notice on recommendations, B talks to provide feedback on the additional considerations for inclusion in the direction of travel. From my perspective, I'm pretty comfortable in the direction that we're going. Can I just check you've taken some notes, Gina, from today? And I'm just wanted to check also, I'm assuming that will also include engagement with KHAG in regards to information leading to that document as well. That's correct. Is there any one thing that people want to just not note as a quick point that we may have missed in regards to wanting to be included in that document as such? Gone. Okay, if I could have a mover then. Okay, thank you, Kathy. Kathy's moving 8.1, A, B, and C. Yep, as written. Could I have a seconder? Through Lawrence Kirby. Kathy, anything you'd like to talk to? Waved. Any debate? Okay, if I could have a vote on that. That's fantastic. Yeah, carried. Thank you very much, Chris and Gina, for your report. Much appreciated. And thank you very much for staying as well, Sandra, as well. Appreciate your input at all times. And also, just thank you for all the fantastic work you've done, and will do as chair of CAG as well. Much appreciated. Move on, bearing in mind we're going to be putting the recommendation up on the board in just a moment. I think we will just look for confirmation of the minutes, 9.1. Is there any alterations? I think, Johnny, you had something.
Oh, yeah, just with the liaison group, I guess that was more the community board initiating that community liaison group with Kāingaroa rather than sort of Kāingaroa sort of developing it.
Just make a small correction on there. If anyone needs to get clarity from Johnny what that is, that'd be great. So with that minor alteration, are we happy to can I have a mover for confirmation of the minutes? Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And if I have a seconder, Kathy, I'm assuming all rights waived. So if I can have a vote on that. That's passed. Thank you very much. If I could just bring you back quickly to item 7.2 with regards to reactive maintenance on community facilities. If I could just have up a recommendation up on the board there. That's the update. If you could just have a quick read of that. I'll read it out. The subcommittee requests that the Mayor correspond with the identified stakeholders, primarily Greater Wellington, Kiwirau and Whakatau, with regards to addressing graffiti and damage as it occurs on the assets in the Kāpiti community as per their own policies. 1, address the issue. 2, remove the graffiti. And 3, repair the affected assets in a timely manner. Mike, are you okay as how that reads?
I just wondered, as soon as it occurs?
As soon, okay, sure, we can add that word in.
So timeliness is the key with this stuff.
Yep. Oh, I can emphasise that. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, with the plan of attack here is that this will then come to the council meeting, which then we'll follow through when it comes to that, but I'll make the Mayor aware of this recommendation as she's normally at this, or perhaps you could, Lawrence, make aware of that, as she's normally does attend these meetings anyway. So if I could have a mover for 7.2, where we, 1A, received, the subcommittee notes the update, and B, does the recommendation. If I could have a, through Kathy, moving that, and a seconder. Nigel, any debate on that at all? Waived? Okay, if I could have a vote on that. Okay, that's moved. Thank you very much. Now, just moving on to the winding up of the meeting in a very timely manner. If I could ask him, if you could perhaps give us a closing karakia, would be very, very much appreciated.
Make this short and sweet. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, kia te whaia tō tātou araki o iu karaiti, me te arohau te atua me te whiwhinga taitanga ki te wairua tapu ake. Amen.
Thank you very much. I note that our next committee meeting, by crikey, Charlie, it's not till the 7th of March. It'll be on the other side of Christmas, yeah. So it's a fair way off. So from this committee's perspective, I hope you all have an enjoyable Christmas and a great new year. Recharge the batteries to come back for a long-term plan, the adventure of the long-term plan and its implementation in the coming year. Hey, can't wait. Didn't think you could. So we have an 11 o'clock briefing.